Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and time for another Halloween card. So I pulled out this older Pure Innocence image. This is Pure Innocence Mummy from My Favorite Things. And I die cut my Nina Solar White 110 pound cardstock ahead of time because this is a solid die. And this is how I used to always do it before there was as many outline dies as there were. I always die cut first and then stamped after. And you saw my head get in the way there. It's so I could look straight down after I'd inked up the image so I could stamp it centered within the die cut there. So I stamped the Pure Innocence Mummy with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And my original plan was to just color the skin traditionally, you know, a traditional skin tone sort of thing. And then got thinking and I was like, I should make it more kind of washed out and zombie-ish looking, as if she's wearing some makeup or something like that, or if she's a real zombie, whatever floats your boat. So I chose to use E81 and then added G40 and G82 to give this green kind of cast to her skin. I just kind of blended it out a bit, working from, I just started with the E81, then I had added the G40 and then added that G82 and then kind of blended it all again with that E81 to give it that kind of gross look, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it, but anyway. For the bandages, I didn't want to leave them completely just plain. I wanted to add some texture and a bit of dimension to it. So I'm using some neutral gray Copics for this, and I started with N6. I've super sped this up. This is about 8 times faster than what it actually took me. It didn't take me that long, really. But it's kind of boring coloring. I'm not doing anything fantastic. But yeah, I started with N6 and then I started blending that out with N4. And then I went over all that with N1 to blend it. And then finally I took my colorless blender to complete all of the blending. So it just, you know, blended out smoothly. And then when I was looking at it, I was like, it needs a little bit something more, some more color of some sort. So actually I colored her hair purple. I wanted to add just something. It just, with just the skin and then the bandages, it was starting to look kind of boring. So I used V25 and V22. And as always, I will have a picture on my blog post with the actual like Copics listed. So I did that, and then I grabbed a larger sheet of the same cardstock, just some 110 pound heavyweight cardstock, and I'm using the Slider Channel Builder Dynamics, as well as one of the large dies from the Blueprints 29 Dynamics. I think this is the 3rd time I've used Blueprints 29. 3rd time in 3 videos, something like that. I tend to just reach for whatever's convenient, and this one was still sitting out from the last card, so I pulled that out. So my plan was to create a slider channel behind the main aspect of the card with a little bit of a twist. So I needed to kind of figure out, I needed to cut a small window basically to pull along this image. And I just used one of the dies from the Slider Channel Builder Dynamics. I figured out where I wanted that to be cut just by kind of eyeballing it and lining up the image and then the slider that's going to go behind, all that kind of stuff. So I did a bit of like mental figuring out here on camera where I was going to place everything. This was another one of those cards where it was a vague idea in my head. I didn't practice it before filming. I'm just figuring it out as I go along. So I figured out where I wanted to die cut this channel onto my card front, and then ran it through my Big Shot a second time to die cut this piece. It was just easier to use the die from the Slider Channel Builder Dynamics rather than, you know, cutting with a craft knife, all that kind of stuff. I just wanted it to be simple. And that was actually my original plan with this. I was going to keep this super simple, like white on white. I was going to, you know, have the image, maybe stamp a sentiment, keep this really clean and simple. But then as I was sitting here and I was kind of looking at it, I'm like, it looks boring. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to dress this up a bit. So I actually grabbed, this is a little star stamp from the Frightfully Fun Halloween stamp set. I was going through my stamp sets yesterday and I came across this one, and for some reason I thought it was retired and it's not. And this is an awesome stamp set, like so fun for Halloween. So I'm just using this one little, this is just a little kind of scribbly star image. So I treated the cardstock with anti-static powder first, and then I'm stamping this star stamp with Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, and then I'm coating it with detail white embossing powder. And I just stamped it along the top of this cardstock, and then heating it up with my heat tool until it's completely melted. So it doesn't really look like much at the moment. But then I pull out several different distress inks, and I super sped this up again because this took a little while to get all the colors blended. Honestly, my arm was sore after this. You know you've done good blending when your arm gets really sore. So I used Shaded Lilac, Milled Lavender, and Dusty Concord, and just sponging them on. I'm using, I don't think for this piece it was actual Nina Solar White because the colors blend a little better on here. If you want really good blending, use Bristol Smooth cardstock. Then you get fabulous blending. But I'm pretty sure this is just some cheaper heavyweight cardstock that actually ended up in my Nina folder because the colors didn't blend as well on here. But I wasn't too worried about it being perfect blend because I pulled it off and then sprayed it with my Distress sprayer. So I got that fun splattery look, and then I just picked up the water with my paper towel and then just quickly dried it again with my heat tool so I didn't have to sit and wait for it to dry. So once I got that completely dry, I'm going to start like figuring out the rest of the cards. So I wanted there to be some ground then, since this image needed something to walk on. So I grabbed a piece of Green Room cardstock from MFT. And then I die cut it with that same large die from the Blueprints 29 set, just because I wanted that stitched edge along the bottom and the sides so that it went with everything else, just for the continuity. And then I ran it through my Big Shot a second time with one of the Grassy Edges dynamics. So I've got the grassy edge along the top and then the stitching along the bottom. And then to make it go better with that sponge distress background, I sponged this as well with two different distress inks. I used Forest Moss and Mowed Lawn. And it just helped it kind of blend so it wasn't just stark green cardstock. So once I was done with all the sponging of that, I adhered that to the bottom of this cardstock with some Tombow Mono Multi. And then this is where I'm starting to kind of figure out where I'm going to place this channel. This die is meant, that channel there is meant to keep the slider element from sliding all over, and it gives it so it's straight, which I think is just brilliant. Like, it just makes it so much easier to use. I hate fiddling around with things like that. That's why I don't do very many interactive cards, because I just can't be bothered. I don't like having to figure things out and fiddle and do all that kind of stuff. I'd rather just do something like this, like where you just die cut it and you're pretty much done. Like, convenience is king with me. So that die, it cuts, you know, the channel, and then it cuts the slider piece and all that. So I adhered the extra cardstock pieces that I had die cut because that builds it up a little bit more so that it's got something to slide in and out of. And then for the actual slider piece, I wanted to stamp a sentiment. So I grabbed a sentiment from the Pure Innocence Mummy set, and I taped off the top part that says Curses. And I taped that off and then just inked out the bottom part, removed the tape, and then stamped that onto the slider piece here. And then same thing, I didn't want it to be stark white because then it's not going to go with the rest of the card. So I did the exact same thing, sponged those same 3 purple distress inks all over this piece to go with this background. And then did the exact same, sprayed it too because, you know, it's all got to match. So once I was done that, I took that sentiment again and this time taped off the bottom part so I could ink up just the word Curses and then remove the tape, make sure there's no ink anywhere on the rest of the sentiment. So I just wiped that off with a baby wipe, rubbed it with my fingers to make sure there was no, so it wasn't wet or anything. And then I stamped that onto the card front itself. And I didn't like how it kind of faded into, it's harder to see since I was stamping black on so much purple. So I just took a Copic multi-liner, like really any dark, just a good black pen will work. But I just used my Copic multi-liner and just went over the sentiment again, just to deepen that and make it stand out a little bit more. So once I'm done with that, I can start getting onto the card itself. So I'm going to adhere this slider channel with the same mono multi, and I had already figured out where that's going to be placed. I wanted it kind of lower down there so that you can't see that stamped sentiment from the front of the card. So got that adhered into place and then made sure that it's going to work. So you can see that's how it's going to look. It's going to be so much fun. This card was fun to make. So totally more involved than I planned, but hey. So anyway, I grabbed some pattern paper from my stash. This is the MFT Itsy Bitsy Polka Dot 6x6, and there was this fun just gray polka dot in there, so I was like, that'll be perfect for a background. And then my card base was more heavyweight white cardstock cut to 8.5 by 5.5, so then scored at 4 1/4, so it's a top folding A2 sized card. And adhered that polka dot paper straight on to the card base, so it completely covers up the card, so all you're going to see is the polka dot paper. And then to make this work a little better, this little slider element, I just grabbed some green ribbon from my stash, some MFT ribbon that I've had for eons. That roll has, I think, like 50 yards on it. It's going to last me for the rest of my life. Anyway, I cut a small piece of it, and then I just attached it to the end of this with my Tim Holtz Tiny Attacher. And then to adhere this card front to my card, I popped on some foam tape, and making sure to leave that little area there that is basically on the left, which will be on the right, open, because that's where it's going to slide in and out of. So I just applied foam tape to the top, the one side, and along the bottom. Then I'm going to peel off the backing here, and I'm going to adhere this to my card. And then once I've got this adhered, I will have that open end on the right to insert my little slider element. So I'm going to get that into my card. This is going to be fun. And then to attach my little mummy, I grabbed one of the MFT spin and slide discs. So they're just little plastic discs. These things are awesome. I highly recommend them. They're so small and they're lightweight. And I put the slider piece in there so I know exactly where it's going to be. And then I adhered one of the slider discs with a tiny little dab of multimedia matte adhesive, making sure not to apply too much because you don't want it to ooze out the sides and then end up gluing everything together. And then once that glue had set, which didn't take very long, I added another dab to the top of it and then just adhered my little mummy to that. And now that the glue is dried, because I made this yesterday, this is adhered really, really well. Like, you would have to pull quite hard to rip this mummy off of that piece. So I found that was enough to adhere it. And now you can see how it just slides along when you pull on the little ribbon tab. How fun is this? So of course, to finish off the inside, I kept the inside simple since I went so much effort on the outside. I just used a scrap of that same polka dot paper and just used that along the bottom of the card. And then I grabbed MFT's Wild Wisteria dye ink. I could have used one of the Distress inks, but Distress inks don't stamp like as crisply, and I just wanted this to be simple and smooth and crisp. So I inked it up with that ink and stamped the mummy there with that purple ink. And then I grabbed another sentiment from the set and stamped that with the intense black ink. And that finishes off my card. So I have this fun Halloween themed birthday card. And yeah, pull on the fun little ribbon tab and she slides along the card. How fun is this? So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post, the picture of the Copics used, all these pictures, that sort of thing. All that info will be in the description box below the video if you are interested. And at the end of the video, I've also got a link to a couple other Halloween videos I did, one at the beginning of the series and one from actually a couple years ago. So you can check those out if you've missed them. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye.